Alex Morrison stood in the observation room and looked out at the black space. Kepler Station had been her home for 3 years now. The colony had 12,000 humans living here, working in science and trade. The Galactic Council had told them the outer reaches were safe. They said the big powers did not care about small human settlements. Alex had believed this until today. Marcus Chun walked into the room. He was her second officer and the best tactical commander she had ever worked with. His face was hard. He held a datapad in his hand. Marcus said, "Colonel, we are getting distress signals from the Valeth Farming Collective 2 systems away. The signals are real. They are under attack right now." Alex turned to face him. She knew about the Valeth. They were insectoid beings. They had not fought in war for more than 3,000 years. They were peaceful farmers who grew food the galaxy needed. They had no weapons. They had no military. Who was attacking them? Alex asked. The Krell Dominion, Marcus said. His voice was flat and hard. The Council says it is a territorial dispute. A diplomatic ship will arrive in 6 weeks. By then, the Valeth colony will be destroyed. Alex felt something shift in her chest. She had been born on Earth. She knew what survival meant. She knew that waiting for someone else to act meant accepting death and destruction that could have been stopped. Humans came from a world that wanted them dead. Every human child learned to act when action was needed. How many are in danger? Alex asked. 40,000 beings. Men, women, and children. The signals show weapons hitting buildings where families live, Marcus said. Alex did not hesitate. She made the decision in the space between one heartbeat and the next. This decision would change everything. It would change her career. It would change humanity's place in the galaxy. But she was human, and humans did not let innocent beings die when they could stop it. Activate the fleet, Alex commanded. Prepare every military ship. We move now. Marcus did not show surprise. He had known what her answer would be. The Krell Dominion has 3 command ships and 6 fighter squadrons. We have 5 heavy cruisers and 8 destroyers. Our numbers are bad, Colonel. I do not care about the numbers, Alex said. I care about whether we can stop them from killing 40,000 beings. The answer is yes. We can stop them. So we will. Marcus left the room to give the orders. Alex stayed and looked out at the stars. The galaxy thought humans were weak. The older powers thought humanity was new and unimportant. The Council had barely granted them a settlement in the outer reaches. Everyone believed humanity would stay quiet and obey the rules, but they did not understand what humans were. They did not know that humans had fought to live on a world where everything tried to kill them. They did not know that humans had built their entire existence around protecting the young, the weak, and the innocent. The old galactic powers had forgotten these things. They had become soft. They made decisions based on law and profit and caution. Humans were different. Humans had learned to survive. Humans had learned to act. In the command center, officers began to move. Ships received orders to prepare weapons. Engineers checked engines that had never been pushed to full power in combat. Soldiers put on their combat suits. They did not question the order. They were human. They understood that some things were worth fighting for. The Valeth colony was 3 hours away at full speed. 3 hours during which the Krell would continue to attack. 3 hours during which more buildings would burn and more families would die. The Terran fleet pushed forward at maximum velocity. Captain Lauren Hayes stood in the command center of the Toronto, the largest human warship in the fleet. She watched the tactical displays. The Toronto was a heavy cruiser designed for exploration and defense. It had never been made for this kind of aggressive combat. But Lauren had been born in the Canadian Arctic. She knew what it meant to survive in a harsh place. She knew what it meant to act when action was needed. Status report, Lauren said that her weapons officer, named David, looked up from his station. All weapons are armed and ready. We are moving at maximum combat speed. We will reach the Valith colony in 170 minutes. The Crow? Lauren asked, still attacking the colony. They do not know we are coming. Their sensor range is not as good as ours. They will not see us until we are very close, David said. Lauren nodded. Humans had an advantage here. The Crow believed they were the strongest power in this region. They believed no one would be crazy enough to attack them. They did not expect a young species to stand up and fight. The fleet moved through space like a knife. Every ship had its guns ready. Every crew member knew they might not survive what was coming. But they moved forward anyway. This was what humans did. They moved forward into danger to protect others. Back on Kepler Station, Emma Rodriguez received updates about the fleet's position. Emma was the governor of the Terran colony, the person responsible for 12,000 human lives. She understood what Alex Morrison had decided to do. She understood that this choice could bring war to their doorstep. It could bring destruction to the colony. But she also understood that you could not call yourself human if you did nothing when you could act. Emma thought of her own children who lived on the station. She thought of all the children in the colony. She thought of the 40,000 Valith children who were in danger right now. There was no choice, really. There had never been a choice. The fleet reached the Valith colony system, just as the Crow were beginning their final assault on the main city. The Valith had tried to fight back with their limited weapons, but they were designed for protection from pirates and natural disasters, not for warfare against a military power. The Terran ships entered the system with their weapons already firing. The first volley of kinetic rounds hit the Crow command ship with tremendous force. The Crow ships did not react with fear. They reacted with confidence. They did not believe these humans could hurt them. This was the moment that changed everything. This was the moment when the galaxy learned what humans truly were. Alex Morrison watched the battle begin. She felt no fear. She felt only the cold certainty of someone who had made a decision and would follow through no matter what came next. 40,000 innocent beings were down on that planet. Her people would protect them. This was not a negotiation. This was not a question. This was simply what humans did. The battle began in the cold darkness of space, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The battle did not go the way the Krell expected. They had fought smaller wars against species with less technology and less training. They had taken territory from weak civilizations. They believed strength meant victory. They believed bigger weapons meant winning. But they did not understand humans. The Toronto fired again. The railguns sent out kinetic rounds at tremendous speed. These rounds did not need fancy technology. They were simple, direct, and devastating. The Krell command ship took the impacts across its shields. The Krell commander expected his shields to hold. But humans had learned long ago that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective. Captain Lauren Hayes watched the tactical display. The Krell had 3 big ships and 6 smaller fighter squadrons. The human fleet had 5 heavy cruisers and 8 destroyers. On paper, the Krell should have won. But papers did not fight wars. People fought wars. And humans had something the Krell did not expect. Lauren gave the next order. All destroyers, focus on the Krell fighters. Do not let them reach the colony. Cruisers, continue bombardment of the command ship. I want it disabled, not destroyed. Her officers moved without hesitation. They did not question the plan. They did not doubt the outcome. This was different from how the Krell military worked. The Krell military followed orders. The human military understood orders. Humans knew when they had to improvise, when they had to adapt, when they had to do something unexpected. The destroyers moved to intercept the Krell fighters. The fighters were fast and maneuverable, designed for precision strikes against enemies in space. But the destroyers had pilots who had trained for years. These pilots had learned to fly in Earth's atmosphere, where the physics were brutal and unforgiving. A mistake in an aircraft over Earth meant death. These pilots understood consequences. Commander John Davis flew the lead fighter of the Toronto Squadron. His ship was smaller than the Krell fighters, but his training was better. He had flown through terrible storms. He had navigated through dangerous terrain. His hands on the controls were steady and sure. The first Krell fighter came at him fast. John did not panic. He turned his ship at an angle that would have torn apart most species in their ships. But humans had built ships that could handle aggressive maneuvers. Humans had expected to fly this way. The Krell fighter could not follow the turn. It passed over John's ship and found 3 more human fighters waiting for it. One by one, the Krell fighters fell. Not because the humans had better weapons, but because the humans understood how to fight. They understood tactics. They understood that victory came from knowing your enemy and being willing to do what the enemy did not expect. In the command center of the Toronto, Lauren watched the destruction of the Krell formation. The Krell had sent their fighters to hit the colony and take out human ships. But the human fighters cut them down. 4 Krell fighters fell in the first engagement. Then 3 more. Then the rest turned and tried to retreat. "Do not let them go," Lauren commanded. "Finish this." The human pilots chased the Krell fighters across the dark space. They did not do this out of anger or cruelty. They did it because the Krell were trying to kill innocent beings on the planet below. They did it because this was their job. And humans were very good at their jobs when the job mattered. Below on the planet, the Vala saw what was happening. The Krell attack had been relentless. The Krell soldiers had been landing on the surface, destroying buildings and herding the Valith toward containment zones. But then the fire from space had stopped. The Krell fighters had disappeared, and the Krell landing soldiers had received orders to retreat back to their ships. The Valith did not understand what had happened. They only knew that the fire had stopped. They only knew that the strange humans from the Terran colony had come and pushed back the attack. On the Toronto, the second phase of the battle began. The 2 remaining Krell command ships tried to destroy the Terran fleet before the humans could do more damage. But the Krell did not understand how humans fought in space. Humans came from a world where you had to use every advantage. Humans never fought the way the Krell expected. The Toronto took heavy damage. One whole section was hit and lost all power. 37 crew members died in that section when the hull breached. But the ship did not stop fighting. It kept firing. It kept moving. It kept protecting the colony. Another human cruiser, the Vancouver, took worse damage. It lost most of its weapon systems. But instead of retreating, the Vancouver moved forward. The captain, a woman named Linda, rammed the ship directly at one of the Krell command ships. The impact tore apart both vessels. The Krell command ship split in half and was lost to space. The Vancouver was crippled, but it did not sink. Its backup systems kicked in. Its crew moved to the intact sections and continued to fight. The Krell were shocked. No species did this. No species rammed their ships into enemies. No species accepted this kind of damage and kept fighting. But humans did. Humans understood that some things were worth the cost. The final Krell command ship tried to escape. Its shields were damaged. Its weapons were failing. The captain realized that the humans would not stop. The captain knew that continuing the fight meant more losses. So the Krell ship broke off the engagement and jumped to hyperspace. The battle was over. 4 hours of constant combat. The human fleet had suffered terrible damage. 2 ships were destroyed completely. 3 others would need weeks of repairs. 287 human crew members were dead. but the Voleth colony was saved. 40,000 beings were alive because humans had decided to act. The Krell attack had failed. The Krell had lost their command ship and multiple fighters. For the first time, a young species had stood up to an established power and won. Lauren Hayes stood in the damaged command center of the Toronto. Power flickered. The air was thin because of the damage to the life support systems. Her crew was exhausted and bloody, but they were alive. And they had won. She sent a message back to Kepler Station. She sent it to Alex Morrison. She sent it to Governor Rodriguez. She sent it to every human who had been waiting and worrying about what would happen. The message was simple. Enemy forces have withdrawn. The Voleth colony is secure. We are damaged but operational, preparing for the journey home. That message meant more than just the military facts. It meant that humanity had changed something fundamental. It meant that the Krell, who thought they were invincible, had been stopped. It meant that a young species from a harsh world had proven they could stand against the old powers. In the days that followed, messages began arriving from all across the galaxy. Species that had lived under the threat of Krell expansion. Species that had believed they could do nothing to resist. They were watching now. They were seeing that resistance was possible. They were seeing that humans had done something no one else had dared to do. The age of the Deathworlders had begun. The galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council had not met in emergency session for 150 years. The chamber was designed to hold representatives from 50 different species. Today, every seat was filled. The tension in the room was thick and heavy. Everyone had come because of what the humans had done. Governor Emma Rodriguez walked into the chamber with her delegation. She was a tall woman with dark hair and a hard face. She had lived her entire life in difficult places. She did not look impressed by the size of the chamber or the number of powerful beings gathered there. Emma stood in the center and waited for the council to acknowledge her presence. The head representative, a being called Vorthek from the Krell Dominion, stood up first. Vorthek was large. His body was made of crystal that glowed with internal light. His voice was sharp and cutting when he spoke. Vorthek said, "The humans attacked the Krell Dominion without authorization. They attacked without asking permission from this council. This is an act of war. This is a violation of the peace accords that have held for 2,000 years. The Krell demand that humanity be punished." Emma did not react. She did not show anger or fear. She simply looked at VOR single quotes THAK. Emma said, "The Krell Dominion was committing genocide against a peaceful species. The Voleth have not fought a war in 3,000 years. They are farmers. They grow food. They are not a threat to anyone. The Krell were murdering them because you wanted their territory. We stopped you, and we would do it again." The chamber erupted. Different species began shouting. The Krell delegation stood in anger. But other representatives looked at Emma with something that might have been respect. They saw a young species that was not afraid to speak truth to power. A representative from the Syrian Confederacy stood up. The Syrians were smaller than humans, but they were known as peaceful and intelligent. The Syrian representative, named Talus, had a quiet voice, but everyone heard it. Talus said, "For 300 years, the Krell had expanded their territory. 300 times, they have taken land from smaller species. 300 times, the Council has done nothing because the Krell followed the law, even when the law was unjust. The humans did what the Council should have done. The humans protected the weak when the strong would not." Vorthek turned to Talus. "The Syrians are also weak. The Syrians hide behind the Council's protection. You have no right to criticize the strong." But Talus did not stop. "That is exactly the problem. The Council has protected the powerful and abandoned the weak. Now a young species has shown us that there is another way. The humans have shown us that strength means nothing if you have no honor. The debate raged for hours. Some representatives argued that the humans had violated the law by attacking without permission. Others argued that the law was broken when the Krell attacked a peaceful people. The chamber became divided. On one side stood the powerful species who wanted order and tradition. On the other side stood the smaller species who wanted justice and protection. Then the Valith representative stood up. His name was Shurth. He was tall, with a body like an insect and compound eyes that caught and reflected light. The Valith had always been quiet in council meetings. They always followed the rules. They never caused trouble. Everyone was shocked to see Shurth stand. Shurth said, "The Krell soldiers came to our colony. They came with weapons and fire. They wanted to take our land. They wanted to kill our children and enslave our workers. We could not stop them. We built no weapons because we believed we did not need weapons. We believed the council would protect us. But the council did nothing. The humans came. The humans lost 287 soldiers to save 40,000 of my people. They asked for nothing in return. They asked only that we would survive." Shurth looked at the entire council. "I have never seen strength like this. I have seen powerful species with great weapons. But I have never seen a species that would sacrifice for beings they had never met. The humans are not like us. The humans are something new." Then Shurth did something that shocked the entire chamber. He called for a vote. It was a formal vote under council law. He called for humanity to be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. The law said that a full member could only be a civilization with advanced technology, peaceful history, and acceptance from existing members. Humanity had none of these things except the technology. Humans were young. Humans were new. Humans came from a harsh world that had taught them to fight. But the vote was held anyway. The Krell voted no. 2 other major powers voted no. But 7 smaller species voted yes. The Syrians voted yes. The Valith voted yes. Species that had lived in fear of the Krell voted yes. The final count was 10 yes votes and 4 no votes, with 2 abstentions from species that did not want to anger the Krell. Amma Rodriguez had just made humanity a full member of the Galactic Council. Vorthik stood up. His crystal body glowed with anger. "This is a mistake. The humans will bring chaos to the galaxy. They will use their strength to dominate others. You will regret this decision." But Emma simply shook her head. "No, we will bring something different. We will bring the idea that power should be used to protect the weak, not to prey on them. We will bring the idea that honor matters more than victory." Emma left the chamber with her delegation. The council remained in session for hours after she left. They debated what had just happened. They debated what it meant for the future of the galaxy. Back on Kepler Station, humans received the news. The council had voted to accept humanity as a full member. It meant that humans now had a voice in galactic affairs. It meant that humans had the right to vote on policies that affected all species. It meant that humanity had jumped from being a minor colony to being a major power in just a few hours. Colonel Alex Morrison stood in the observation room again. She looked out at the same black space she had been watching when Marcus had come in with news of the Valith attack. So much had changed in 1 week. Marcus walked in, just like he had before. But this time, he was carrying news of a different kind. This time, he carried news of a future that no one could have predicted. Marcus said, "Colonel, the Council has accepted us. We are full members now. And there are already messages coming in from 12 other small species. They are asking if we will form an alliance with them. They are asking if we will be their protection." Alex looked out at the stars. She knew that answering yes to that question would change everything. It would mean that humans would become protectors for species across the galaxy. It would mean that the peaceful role they had planned would be gone forever. It would mean that humans would carry the burden of being the strong that the weak could depend on. But that was what humans had always done. Humans had always protected those who could not protect themselves. It was in their nature. It was in their bones. It was what had made them human. Alex turned to Marcus and smiled. Tell them yes. Tell them we will protect them. Tell them that is what humans do. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had changed it. 6 months after the battle, the Strategic Planning Center on Kepler Station looked like a war room. Maps covered the walls. Intelligence reports filled the tables. Colonel Alex Morrison had stopped sleeping regular hours. She was awake when officers needed her. She was awake when decisions had to be made. The messages had never stopped coming. First, it was the Syrians, asking for military support. Then the Valeth, asking for trade agreements and security guarantees. Then came the Chevrolet technocracy, the ancient species that had always claimed neutrality, asking if humans would be interested in technology exchanges. But the real messages were the ones from the small species. There were dozens of them. Species that lived in fear of the Krell or other aggressive powers. Species that had no military. Species that had watched humanity stand up to the Krell and realized that resistance was possible. All of them wanted protection. All of them wanted to know if humanity would stand for them the way humanity had stood for the Veil-Thid. Captain Marcus Chun brought in the latest casualty report from the Toronto. The ship was still being repaired. Over 147 crew members had died in the battle. Their families were grieving. Some had decided to leave the colony and go back to Earth. The cost of standing up had been real. Marcus said, "We are getting requests from every direction. The Krell are not attacking again, but we know they will. They are building ships. They are recruiting mercenary forces. The Krell want revenge." Alex looked at the reports. She understood what was happening. The galaxy was dividing. On one side stood the old powers that wanted to keep the system as it was. The Krell Dominion, the major species that have benefited from the old way of doing things. On the other side stood the young species and the weak species that wanted change. And humanity was in the middle, deciding which direction the galaxy would move. Alex said to Marcus, "What do you think we should do?" Marcus did not hesitate. "We made a promise when we stopped the Krell from killing the Valeth. We promised that we would protect the innocent. We can't take that back now just because it is hard." Alex nodded. She had known Marcus would say that. She had known he would understand. Because Marcus was human, and humans understood that promises mattered. The strategic decision was made. Humanity would build alliances with the smaller species. Humanity would create a defensive network that would protect these worlds from predatory powers. It would be a formal alliance with laws and agreements and responsibilities. Over the next 3 months, the Alliance of Protected Worlds was formed. It started with the Valeth and the Syrians. Then, the Chevrolet technocracy joined, though they claimed it was only for trade purposes. Then came a stream of smaller species, each one bringing its own problems and needs and fears. By the time the formal gathering was organized, 23 different species had signed the alliance agreement. Governor Emma Rodriguez stood in the new chamber that had been built specifically for the alliance. The chamber was smaller than the Galactic Council chamber, but it was new and it belonged to this new union. Representatives from all 23 species were present. Emma knew that every word she said now would matter. Every decision would affect millions of lives. Emma said, "We gather today not as conquerors, but as those who have decided that we will not accept the domination of the powerful. We gather because each of us has chosen to stand together instead of being preyed on individually. This is not about revenge. This is about survival. This is about justice." The representatives looked at each other. Some of them were afraid. They knew that forming this alliance might bring conflict with the Krell and other major powers. But they also knew that staying separate and weak meant accepting their own destruction eventually. The Valeth representative, Shurth, stood and spoke. We would not exist if not for humanity. Our children would be dead or enslaved. We join this alliance not from fear, but from gratitude and from hope that together we can create a galaxy where the strong do not prey on the weak. The Syrians joined in. Then the HFY technocracy made a formal statement about the technological advantages this alliance would bring. One by one, the species stood and committed themselves to the alliance, but not everyone was happy about this. The Krell Dominion issued a formal protest to the Galactic Council. They claimed that the Alliance of Protected Worlds was a threat to stability. They claimed that humans were trying to create an empire. The major powers in the galaxy began to take notice. The balance of power that had existed for thousands of years was shifting back on Kepler Station. Colonel Alex Morrison received intelligence reports about Krell military movements. The Krell were building a fleet. The Krell were recruiting soldiers from mercenary species. The Krell were preparing for war. Alex knew this was coming. She had known from the moment she made the decision to attack the Krell command ship. Every action had a consequence. Every choice had a price. She called her officers together. She called Marcus and Lauren and David and every commander who had fought in the first battle. She looked at them and spoke directly. Alex said, "The Krell will attack again. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month, but they will attack. They will want revenge. They will want to prove that they are still the dominant power in this region. When they attack, we will be ready, and we will show them that humanity stands by its word. We will protect the Alliance, whatever it costs." Lauren Hayes, captain of the Toronto, nodded slowly. "The ship is almost repaired. We will be ready." Marcus said, "All the Alliance worlds are being fitted with basic defense systems. It is not much, but it is something." Alex felt the weight of command pressing down on her. She was responsible for the lives of people under her command. She was responsible for the safety of the Alliance worlds. She was responsible for the future of humanity in the galaxy. But she did not doubt. She did not question. She simply moved forward, just as humans had always moved forward when faced with obstacles. She said, "Then we wait. And when they come, we fight. We fight to protect our alliance. We fight to show that humans do not break their promises. We fight because that is what we do." The officers left her office. Alex stood alone in the darkness. Outside the window, she could see the lights of the colony. She could see the humans working and living and preparing for what was coming. The galaxy was not safe anymore. But it had never really been safe. The difference now was that some beings had decided to fight back. The difference now was that the weak had found protection. The difference now was that humans had changed something fundamental, and everyone in the galaxy was watching to see what would happen next. 1 year had passed since the battle at the Valeth colony. The Alliance of Protected Worlds had grown to include 31 different species. The Alliance controlled a significant portion of the outer reaches. And the Krell had not attacked again. But the tension had not gone away. It had only grown thicker. The first Alliance conference was held on a neutral station designed by the HFY technocracy. Representatives from all 31 species gathered. Governor Emma Rodriguez entered the main chamber to begin the proceedings. She wore the formal uniform of the Terran Colonial Authority. She was no longer just the governor of a small human settlement. She was the leader of the largest coalition the outer reaches had ever seen. The chamber was massive. It held platforms for every species to stand on, adjusted for their different heights and body shapes. The Valeth occupied one section. The Syrians occupied another. The Chevor technocracy had a reserved area with advanced technology to allow them to participate remotely if they needed to dot, and in the center stood the human delegation. Alex Morrison stood beside Emma. Marcus Chun stood ready to answer any tactical questions. The officers who had fought in the first battle stood as witnesses to what humans could do. Emma looked at all the gathered representatives and began to speak. Her voice was clear and direct, without any soft words. Emma said, "We gather here today because we made a choice. We chose not to accept that the strong would prey on the weak forever. We chose not to accept that peace meant the silence of the oppressed. We chose to stand together." She paused. The chamber was completely silent. Emma continued, "I want to be clear about something. This alliance is not an empire. We are not here to conquer other worlds. We are not here to take resources or territory. We are here because we have agreed on one simple principle. We will not stand by while the powerful destroy the weak." Vorthok, the Krell representative, had been waiting for this moment. He stood up immediately, his crystal body glowing with rage. Vorthok said, "This is an empire. You are just calling it something else. The humans have created a military power that threatens all of us. The Krell Dominion demands that the Galactic Council dissolve this alliance. This organization threatens the stability of the galaxy." But Emma simply looked at him. She did not look angry. She did not look afraid. She looked like someone who had already made their decision long ago and was simply following through. Emma said, "The Krell Dominion threatens stability. The Krell Dominion expands by force and takes what belongs to others. The Krell Dominion kills because you can. This alliance exists because we have decided that we'll stop. If you do not like that, you are welcome to leave this region of space." The Krell representative began to argue, but the Valeth representative, Shurth, stood up. His compound eyes fixed on Vorthok. Shurth said, "I lost 15,000 of my people in the Krell attack. 15,000 beings, many of them children. The humans prevented even greater loss. If you call that an empire, then I welcome empires that save innocent lives. I support the Alliance of Protected Worlds, and I call on all other council members to support it as well." The Syrian representative stood also. "The Syrian Confederacy stands with the Alliance. We have known peace under their protection. We have seen our citizens live without fear of conquest. We believe this is the correct path forward." One by one, representatives stood and declared their support for the Alliance. Not all of them did. Some species remained neutral. Some abstained from voting. But the declaration was clear. The Alliance had the support of the majority of species in the region. The Galactic Council issued a statement 6 months later. They acknowledged the Alliance of Protected Worlds as a legitimate political and military organization. They would not dissolve it. They would not prevent its existence. But they also made clear that they would hold the Alliance responsible if it violated the laws and principles of Galactic Society. Emma Rodriguez received the message and simply nodded. This was acceptable. Humanity did not need the Galactic Council's permission to do what was right. But it was good to have their acknowledgement that the Alliance was legitimate. The years that followed saw a transformation in the outer reaches. Species that had lived in fear for generations began to build openly. They expanded their colonies. They developed their industries. They sent their children to school knowing that they were safe. Trade flourished because merchants no longer had to travel in fear of being attacked and robbed. Small powers could negotiate with large powers as equals now because they had allies who would stand with them. The Krell Dominion did not fade away. They continued to exist, but their expansion stopped. Other major powers in the galaxy watched carefully. Some of them began to form their own alliances, copying the model that humanity had created. The structure of galactic power was changing. Alex Morrison and Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station. The station had been rebuilt and expanded. There were now docking facilities for ships from all the Alliance species. There were markets where alien traders bought and sold goods. There were schools where young beings from different species studied together. The Toronto was in dock, fully repaired and upgraded. The ship that had been damaged so badly in the first battle was now the flagship of the Alliance Force. Other ships had been built. The Alliance military was growing, but that was not what captured Alex's attention as she stood looking out at the stars. What captured her attention was the knowledge that those stars were different now. The galaxy was different. The possibility had changed. Marcus said, "Do you ever regret it? Do you ever think about how quiet and peaceful things would have been if we had just ignored the Valith distress call?" Alex considered the question. She thought about the 12,000 humans on Kepler Station. She thought about the people she had lost in the battle. She thought about the cost, but she also thought about the 40,000 Valith who were alive because humans had acted. She thought about the Syrians and the Shevor and all the other species who now lived without fear of conquest. Alex said, "No, I do not regret it. This is what humans are supposed to do. We are supposed to stand up. We are supposed to protect the innocent. We are supposed to do the hard thing when it is the right thing." Marcus nodded. He had known what her answer would be. The two of them stood in silence and watched the galaxy change. A young species from a harsh world had arrived in the stars, and they had brought with them something the older civilizations had forgotten: the willingness to sacrifice for others, the refusal to accept injustice, the decision to stand against the powerful when the powerful was wrong. The Krell Dominion was still out there, still strong and dangerous. The major galactic powers were still powerful. The galaxy was still a difficult place to live, but it was different now. It was more just. It was more fair. And it was different because humans had decided that they would make it different. Governor Emma Rodriguez sent out a message to all the Alliance worlds on the anniversary of the first battle. She told the story of what had happened 1 year before. She told of the Valith in danger and the humans who came to help. She told of the battle in space and the victory that followed. And then she said something that would be repeated for generations to come. Emma's message said, "We are human. We come from a world that wanted to kill us. And we survived because we protected each other. That same principle guides us now. We will always stand for those who cannot stand for themselves. We will always act when action is needed. We will always choose what is right over what is easy." The message traveled across space. Every species in the Alliance heard it, and every species understood what it meant. They understood that humanity was different. They understood that the galaxy had changed. They understood that the age of predatory empires was ending, and the age of justice was beginning. The stars burned bright above them, and the future stretched out ahead, full of possibility and hope, and the promise of a galaxy where the strong protected the weak, where honor mattered more than power, and where being human meant standing up for what was right. The Deathworlders had come to the stars, and they had changed everything.